Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being with us this evening. We have a nice full house. It's good to see voters and interested supporters of the candidates. I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening for this debate between the candidates who are running for Hancock County Sheriff in the May 6th primary. Over the course of the next hour, they will share their vision for running the Sheriff's Department and make their cases for why they deserve your vote. I am Dave Hill, editor of the Daily Reporter, and I will be your moderator this evening. I should say at the outset that tonight's debate is co-sponsored by the Hancock County Public Library and is being recorded for telecast on Monday evening by the Greenfield Central Broadcast Department, represented by Mr. Bill McKenna, and in partnership with 9 Star Connect. Let's meet the two Republican candidates who will be vying for your vote in the primary. First off, incumbent Mike Shepard is running for his second term in office. First elected in 2010, he's had a long career in law enforcement and public safety, having served as a deputy for the Hancock County Sheriff's Department and also as the chief of police in Fortville. His challenger is also a longtime lawman. Donnie Munden is formerly the #2 commander at the Hancock County Sheriff's Department and has spent 27 years in various positions with the Sheriff's Department. This is his first time running for sheriff. During our debate this evening, each candidate will answer a series of questions. I have a set up here that I have come up with, but as you were coming in, you were also offered the chance to perhaps write down a question of your own. If you have not yet written a question, or if you, during the course of our proceedings this evening, come up with one that maybe you think about when you hear one of the candidates answer a question, raise your little piece of paper in the air, and Mary Beth Vaughn, who's sitting at the back of the room, will spot you and will come get it. Those will make their way up here. I will take a look at them, and if we can squeeze those in, we will attempt to do so during the course of the hour. Candidates will have up to 2 minutes for opening and closing statements, as well as 2 minutes to respond to each of the questions. There is some rebuttal time. 1 minute per candidate per question will be allowed. I also may ask follow-up questions as well, just to elicit, to be sure that your answers are clear and that everyone understands what you were trying to say. I will now ask that everyone please silence your cell phones, and please show the candidates the courtesy of your attention by holding applause until the end of our discussion. By prior arrangement, it was actually a coin flip, rather awkwardly done because the coin bounced off the top of my head. A few minutes ago, Sheriff Shepard will present the opening statement first. 2 minutes, Sheriff.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hill. I appreciate it. I want to thank the Daily Reporter for hosting this, and also the Hancock County Library for also hosting this, co-hosting this. As you stated, I've been in law enforcement quite a while. Been in it now, started over 33 years ago as a Fortville patrol officer. I was on there about 2 years when I applied for and got on the Hancock County Sheriff's Department, where I spent 18 years. Started working in the jail, then moved up in the ranks, and was eventually out on the road as a shift commander. And then in 2000, the police chief's job opened up in Fortville, so I applied for it and got the job there. I was chief there for 7 years. And while I was chief there, was able to have the honor of going to the FBI National Academy. It was a 10-week course out in Quantico, Virginia, that just, they say 1% of all police officers ever get to go there. And so that was an honor to get to go there. Then I left there in 2007 to take over as Director of Security at the Hancock Regional Hospital. I spent a little over 3 years there. And then in 2010, ran for sheriff, and obviously won the election. And after winning the election, my #1 goal was to run the department with professionalism and integrity. And my #2 goal was to choose a staff that also had that same goal, was to run it with professionalism and integrity. And I believe that I have succeeded in getting a great staff in place. And then I also, my type of leadership, I chose the best people to be the leaders of their divisions, to be the shift commanders, and I let them run their departments. I don't try to micromanage. I don't get involved. But ultimately, if anything does happen, the buck does fall with me, and I would take responsibility for anything that happens on the department. I'm hands-on sheriff. I like to be involved. Many times I'll need somebody in court picked up, something like that, and I believe in doing that, being involved in that. So anyway, I've enjoyed my first term as sheriff, worked hard at it, and look forward to another term as sheriff. Thank you.
Mr. Munden.
Good evening. I too would like to thank the Daily Reporter for hosting or having this event in the Hancock County Public Library for hosting it. I thank you for attending, and I appreciate your interest in what we have to say here tonight. My name is Donnie Munden. I am a 27-year member of the Hancock County Sheriff's Office. I graduated from Eastern Hancock High School in 1984, went on to Vincennes University where I received a degree in law enforcement in 1987, and I was lucky enough to get hired at the Sheriff's Office shortly thereafter. Through my time at the Sheriff's Office, I have held various ranks and positions, from jail officer up to chief deputy, and even served as acting sheriff for a few months at the end of 2010. Most police officers, or all police officers that I know, start this career with the intent of helping people and to keep their community safe. I too have that ideal. I think that we have a great sheriff's office. We have great men and women that work at the sheriff's office. I've been asked by members of the public why I chose to run for sheriff of Hancock County. People that I work with, my coworkers, understand why I need to run for sheriff. But the public, I've been approached by several members that asked me why I chose to run. And I think that Hancock County is a safe place to live and work, and I would like to continue that ideal for future generations of Hancock County. With some of the things that have been happening recently with our department, there have been things that have happened that shouldn't have happened, and there are things that should be happening that are not happening. And if you elect me sheriff of Hancock County, I will make sure that Hancock County is a safe place to live and work, and where you and your future generations can raise their families. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll move on to our questions. By virtue of our arrangements, Mr. Munden will field the first question, and from there we'll alternate back and forth. Election time is always a chance for an incumbent to reboot and to refocus on things he wants to do in a second term. A challenger, of course, will focus on things he wants to do differently. What is your chief goal for the Sheriff's Department for the next 4 years, and how will you go about making sure you reach it?
Well, I plan on being fiscally responsible for the taxpayers of Hancock County and making sure that they are receiving the service that they deserve. Like I said previously, we have good men and women that work at the Sheriff's Office, and I will utilize those to the best of their ability. Obviously, one of the major concerns that I have is the drug abuse issues in Hancock County. We currently do not have an officer that investigates local drug abuse sales, and I think that that's wrong. I think that we should aggressively pursue that. A lot of the property crimes in any community is as a result of drug abuse. The secondary and probably even more startling aspect of that is the amount of people who have overdosed and died in our community, whether it's young people or old people. I don't think as a law enforcement agency we can sit back and watch this happen without standing up and doing what we can to stop that. And if you elect me sheriff, I will make sure that my top priority is to make sure that if someone is caught dealing drugs in Hancock County, that they're in jail where they belong.
Sheriff Shepard.
Okay. And obviously this is where we're different. I think it's a big difference in our running for sheriff. My number one goal has been to get enough officers on the street to patrol the neighborhoods to keep you guys safe. And burglaries have been obviously a problem throughout the county. And I believe that we need more patrol officers out there to keep the county safe, to patrol the areas, and to keep the residents safe here in Hancock County. Yes, if we have enough manpower, then I want to eventually get a detective that will work drug investigations. But right now, we are finally getting that staff where I want us to be. We have 2 officers in the academy right now, another one that will be starting later this year. Once they get through the academy, that will give us enough officers on the road at this time that we can dedicate somebody, 1 or 2 people, working drug crimes, working drug investigations. But I believe that it needs to be a drug investigator. Again, a drug task force tends to take you out of the county more, and you're not working in the county. And I think we need somebody working within the county, staying here, working with other agencies so that we can work with crimes and drugs in this county.
Rebuttal?
1 minute.
I wholeheartedly disagree. I think that we have adequate resources at the Sheriff's Office to not only protect the citizens of Hancock County with their patrol officers, but if we realign those resources, we have enough officers currently that we could dedicate at least 2 officers to a drug task force along with other agencies in Hancock County. I've spoken to department heads throughout the county. They all agree we have a serious drug problem, and that if we don't do something pretty soon, Marion County will, the east side of Marion County will overflow into Hancock County, and the homicides that you see every morning on the news will end up being in Hancock County.
1 minute.
The issue I have with that is about a year and a half ago, we were going through officers injured, officers, different situations. All the shift commanders at that point were asking for more officers. They were needing more officers. We were short on the road because, again, injuries, sickness, maybe disciplinary action, and so forth. So every time we pull somebody off the road, or we put somebody in investigations, the drug task force, whatever, that's pulling somebody else off the road. So if the shift commanders themselves think we're short on the road, how can I justify pulling somebody else off the road? Yes, we're getting those resources up now. And like I stated earlier, we have 2 guys in the academy, another one in training. Once they get through, then I agree, we have enough resources, we can start looking at moving somebody into investigations.
Thank you. Let's stay on the topic of manpower for our next question. Sheriff Shepard, you will field the answer to this one first. And this one has to do with the jail staffing, but I think it kind of overlaps a little bit with policing on the road as well, because it deals with the number of employees at the Sheriff's Department. There was a recent report that concluded that the jail needs up to 12 additional jailers in order for the jail to operate securely. So given that money probably won't be available to hire even 1 or 2 additional deputies over the next couple of years, if I'm reading the county council's tea leaves correctly, what are you prepared to do then to address the staffing issues at the department?
The way we found the need for that, of course, the state's done a reorganization of the jail and the new jail standards. And we first did a study because the county council was doing this zero budget where they would, you basically, going to each department head, you would start with 0 money in your budget, and then you would justify why you need what you need. So we had an expert come in, did a study in our jail, and he determined we needed 12 to 13 new jail officers at that time. So I took that to the county council. Again, that was under their wanting to know what we needed. And then when they did the new jail standards, then we again did a study. We had a guy come in, and that's where we got the 12 new jail officers that we needed. So again, if I held on to that information and didn't tell the council that I needed that and something happened, then, okay, liability falls on me. So I presented it to the county council and to the county commission. Now I know that they can't afford to give us 12 jail officers right away. That'd be a lot of money. But that at least alerts them that they need to come up with some kind of a plan to see what we can do to establish the amount of jail officers that we need. We've done a few things that helped out. We actually changed the jail nurse staff, the medical company that we use, and actually hired them to come in, and they now bring somebody in to serve medications in the evening, on weekends, where the jail staff was having to do that. That alleviated a little bit of the problem. Still doesn't get you up to staff, but that also took away a lot of the liability that we had. Right now, we're working with about 5 to 6 in the jail. We do have some part-time money, part-time people that come in and work in the control room, which helps some of the problem there. But it is still a problem having a shortage in the jail.
Donnie?
I too am a taxpayer, and I realize that it's not possible to hire 12 additional jail officers. In 2010, when Sheriff Shepard took office, we were averaging at that time well over 200 inmates per day. We sometimes we're up to 230 per day. Since then, 2 years ago, fast forward 2 years from Sheriff's taking office, our jail population was averaging about 150. With those figures, he went to the council and asked for 12 additional jail officers. And I'm not sure, I know in the public sector, when your client base is down 25%, you don't ask for a 50% increase in staffing. You can probably hire a firm to justify any kind of number that you want for staffing. And to be honest with you, when I worked the jail, I wish there was twice as many jail officers as there were. That would be fine, but again, I'm a taxpayer as well, and I have to be able to justify to the council every penny that you ask for. And I think that request of 12 was excessive, and so did the council, obviously. And I think that we are slightly understaffed in the jail. I don't know that we need to increase the staff by 50%, but I think it's something that needs to be addressed, but not so drastically.
I would like to correct something. You said 2010 when I took office. Yes, 2010, and there was a campaign issue back then when I was running for sheriff, the overpopulation of the jail, but I didn't take office until 2011. By then, he's correct. It was back down to around 150, sometimes even less. And I know that the council has talked about how we are on the average populated under what we used to be. The jail staffing is low. But here recently, it's been back up. It's been in the 170, 180 range in the jail itself. And I don't, either way, do you compromise safety and security of the jail? Because you don't know when it's going to go back up. It's been averaging 150. The jail is supposed to hold 158. Yet been up to 180, so we've been having to put some other beds in there and take care of that. So I'm sure he was mistaken on the year, but it was 2010 that it was that high. 2011 is when I took office.
Let's stay on that topic for our next question. Deputy Munden, you will take the answer to this one.
Okay.
Because there have been recent stories about the effects of this, whether it's a blip or whether it's a more significant rise in the jail population. It has been going up a little bit lately. A lot of the increase is being blamed not on more arrests, but on fewer people being released, which is kind of a different problem than we've had before. So what should the county do to address that ongoing problem?
Well, the amount of time an offender spends in jail is obviously not up to the sheriff. It's something that the prosecutor's office, the judges, and the probation department have more say-so in. The fact that inmates are getting more time is, I would assume, is because of they're committing more serious offenses. I think that the sheriff's office could do a better job at assessing the inmates that we currently have to utilize them for an inmate worker program. I know that when I was chief deputy, we had a program where we had inmates go out and do work in the community, picked up trash along the county roadways, and particularly one summer we picked up trash for over 500 miles of county roads. That was done at no expense to the taxpayer. CGS picked up the trash for free. Home Depot donated the trash grabbers and the trash bags. We had citizen volunteers come in to monitor the inmates, and that was something that I know it's my 20-plus years as a police officer. People ask me constantly, why don't you have these inmates out doing something productive instead of laying back and watching cable TV? I'll have you know that the inmates had cable TV before I had cable TV at my house, so I understand that. I think the inmate worker program was an asset to the community. It was a win-win situation. The inmates appreciated the fact of being able to get out and give back to the community. Obviously, picking up 500 miles worth of trash along the county roadways was a plus for the county. And I think that the inmates, one inmate in particular told me just after he got released that he would never throw a pop can out a window before. So if that's part of his rehabilitation, I think it worked.
Well, we also used to have inmate workers that would get out and mow the yards around the courthouse and around the annex and so forth. Unfortunately, the insurance company stopped that. There's too much liability there. They didn't want the responsibility and liability there. So the insurance company got with the commissioners, and we had to put a stop to the inmate workers doing that. So ultimately, I haven't checked into it, but I'm sure that they wouldn't want them out. Then the responsibility of them being out along the road, picking up trash, a lot of liability of them getting hurt, a liability of them maybe hurting somebody else. So unfortunately, not even only is that stopped, but also inmate workers getting outside and working in the, like I said, mowing the courthouse, mowing the EOC and different areas there, they can't do that. And it's not the sheriff's fault, whoever's in this office, it is the insurance company that doesn't want us doing it.
Just a quick rebuttal. I've spoken to other sheriffs from throughout the state, and they adopted a program that we had implemented, and they still use that program. I mean, you see the Department of Corrections having inmates out along busy roadways doing work, and I agree that there is some liability associated with that. If we left it up to the insurance companies, I'm sure we'd all live in a plastic bubble, but the fact of the matter is that it was a worthwhile program, and I think it was a program that I hated to see go by the wayside.
I totally agree. It's a worthwhile program, but again, if the insurance isn't going to cover you, something happens, I just don't see putting all that liability back on the taxpayers.
We can keep going on this topic if you like. This was a question I had for later. You've already answered it. Okay, we'll move right along then. Sheriff Shepard will have the first response to this question. I'm going to go back to the jail for one more round, if you don't mind. Sheriff, your administration was blindsided by news in 2012 about the locks at the county jail being in pretty bad condition, deteriorating, being in need of replacement. And the county eventually spent upwards of about $300,000, I think, to replace all those locks. The problem, though, is that seems to be kind of the tip of the iceberg with maintenance issues at the jail. In 2013, the department came up with a list of 30 more problems, to which a price tag of some $4 million was attached. That was presented to the county commissioners, who had a cow. And of course, to date, you haven't been able to get any of that work done. So given this litany of repair work that needs to be done, what do you think is the most prudent approach to dealing with those maintenance issues?
Well, I'd like to cover a little bit about the jail locks. And it started out with the control panel, which was in 2011. When we came in, the control panel for the locks was worn out. There were switches that didn't show secure, switches that were broken you couldn't replace, and you'd have to get on, I don't know, Bill Applegate, whoever would get on eBay or whatever to try to find the switches to get them, but you couldn't replace them anymore. So we went around, got some estimates on that, some ideas on that, went to the county commissioners, told them about it, and they had to go to the county council and get bids on it. So that was about $150,000 to replace that. And then when we got that in place, then the several locks didn't show secure. Okay, we always assumed before when they didn't show secure on the control panel that it was the control panel. Well, then to come to find out when we got a lock company in, a lot of the locks were worn out. And I know it seems like a lot of money. Yes, it was about $350,000. So we're talking about $500,000 between the two projects to replace those. And they came in and had to replace those locks and had to retrofit those locks and everything. When we presented that to the county commissioners and the county council, we showed them a video system of an inmate that got out of a cell, figured out how to get out of there. They could literally kick the door open, went over to another cell, threw urine on another inmate. There were problems like that. That inmate could have just as easily been there, waited till a jail officer came through there, and they could have done something to that jail officer, maybe try to escape. So it was a safety issue of inmates, safety issue of the jail, of corrections officers. And ultimately, if he got out, it could have been a safety issue of the public. So that's why we felt urgent to have to replace that. As far as the $4 million project, that was when a company came in that said they do studies. I took it to the commissioners. The county commissioners requested the study to be done that found out we had about $4 million of projects that needed to be done in the jail.
There's no doubt that the door control panel needed replaced. It was in poor condition. It was antiquated equipment that couldn't be repaired. But the problem I have is the fact that when you hire a company for $100,000+ to replace a door panel, they should make sure the door panel is compatible with the locks that are currently within the facility. Back in 2013, when the locks started getting replaced, we have a member of our staff who was certified by the company that installed the locks originally in the jail, Folger Adam. And Folger Adam, he went to their company and learned how to maintain those locks, to check them, and to periodically maintain them. As far as I know, I've talked to him, he wasn't consulted before they went and got this estimate, and eventually spent $350,000+ on locks. I know that in 2010, when I stopped my time as acting sheriff, all the locks at that time were in working condition. And with that jail being 25 years old, I can't understand how all of a sudden an inmate can figure out how to open a lock. I don't think we have smarter inmates. I think that there apparently was something that needed to be adjusted that was out of whack with that lock, and it could have probably saved the taxpayers a lot of money.
Well, the locks, the control panel was compatible with the locks. It wasn't the compatibility, it was a lock issue. And I would imagine if you went back and viewed videos further back, you probably saw inmates getting out back then. But there were videos, like I said, of inmates, and we've had inmates that told us how they did it, and the way those locks were, and there was supposed to have been a recall on the locks, I think, for lack of a better term, back in the 90s that we understand was never done. Still would not have taken care of this issue, but would have maybe have helped a little bit. Was never done. But talking to the lock company, the life expectancy of these locks were about 15 years. Because the locks are now going on, we're 25 years old. So they were worn out and needed to be replaced. A bunch of them were. And yes, we went and contacted the Department of Corrections, and this is some locks that they went with. Yes, we probably could have gone cheaper, but if they figured out these locks, it's the same type of lock. I really believe that they would have, at that point, figured them out much quicker, how to get them open. It's kind of like technology. Why go with old technology? They had this newer technology that with a better locking system to help keep the inmates in their cells.
Let me back up to something that Deputy Munden said, because what you seem to be suggesting, and I will consider this a new question so that you can both have full response time to this. What you seem to be suggesting is that the $350,000 that was spent on the new locks perhaps was not really the right expense. In other words, was this money spent in error? Is that what you're trying to suggest?
No, what I'm trying to suggest is that I have a difficult time believing that they would give the life expectancy of a lock in a corrections environment 15 years of life expectancy. The company that installed those originally in the jail in 1987 when it opened was Folger Adam. Folger Adam has been in business of making correction locks and equipment for over 100 years. They're still in business. They've recently merged with a Southern Steel company, and it's now called Southern Folger. Their locks are used in 75% of all jails and prisons across the country. I can't imagine that they would have, after 100 years of being in business, manufactured a lock that only had a life expectancy of 15 years. I don't know of anything in a jail, especially in the jail cell itself, that is not expected to last more than 15 years.
I'm just going by what the lock company said, the experts on the lock company. He said those locks, life expectancy on those are 15 years, and they had a better lock that they could fit in that, and several of those were worn out. Like I said, inmates had figured out how to get out of those jails, how to get the doors open, and then it became a safety issue. So I guess we can squabble back and forth. I'm going by what the lock company said. They said life expectancy is 15 years on them, and they were 25 years old at this point and needed to be replaced.
Well, my only concern with that is the fact that if you have a company trying to sell you locks, they're going to tell you whatever they want to sell you the most expensive equipment they can. And I just would have felt better about that if there would have been some consultation with our employee that has certification from the company that manufactured locks to find out if, in fact, they're all faulty or whether we can do some routine maintenance on them.
We did confer with the Department of Corrections, which had the same locks. They confirmed the same things, and they were going to this new locking system. And that was one of the reasons that we chose to go with the new locks also.
Next question will be, Sheriff Shepard, you'll have the first response to this. I'm going to stick with the topic of the jail just for our next question, because where you're kind of headed with all this is the same thing that I think in every campaign for sheriff, at least for the last 3 elections maybe, the topic of building a new jail is usually close to the front of the mind of the candidates. If I'm remembering correctly, there was a proposal that was made kind of informally a year or so ago that a new jail would be needed. And it follows on the tail of a consultant's report a few years before that that also recommended that a new jail be built. Given our increasing population and our increasing crime problems, what is your opinion about the need for a new jail?
Well, the study that was done, they referred to, was done before I was in office. What you referred to there about the new jail, what that was the commissioners were wanting a long-range plan for the county, what we may possibly ever need in the future. So reference was just made sometime in the future. It wouldn't say we need it today. And not even sure on the figure. I believe it was a figure of $80 million was put into that. That was just a pull out the top of our head figure that somewhere in the future we're going to need a new jail. And at some point we probably will, especially if the population keeps going up in the county, population in the jail keeps going up, crime keeps going up. We may need that. But even if today they decide to build a new jail, we're still going to have to maintain this old jail because it's going to take 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 years to get a new jail built. We can't just let this jail fall apart. If that does happen, we still need to maintain that $4 million would probably still need to be put into this jail, $2 to $4 million, because we have sewer pipes bursting. Some time back, a sewer pipe burst in the detective's office right onto a detective's desk and wasn't a pleasant sight or smell, either one. Here more recently, a pipe burst in the meeting room, and a lot of the sewage went over into the interview room. Carpet had to be pulled up on that and replaced. So there are a lot of problems, a lot of aging in the jail. Like I said, they said that the jail ages 4 times faster. It said it ages 4 times faster than a normal building. If you think about it, you've got a population in there that about all they have to do is time to sit around, think of what they can do. They will flush blankets, uniforms down the toilets, which means then that our maintenance man has to go in and clean those out. And every time you run a roto-rooter down it, wears the pipes out a little bit more. So the new jail, that was something to pull off the top of the head just because the commissioners were wanting a long-range plan.
I don't think you'll find a sheriff candidate who's run for a first term of sheriff ever say we need to build a new jail. I think that'd be political suicide. But I do agree that there is probably some growth of inmate population on the horizon, and if I have my way, it'll be filled up with drug dealers in Hancock County. But with that said, I think that we can use the resources that we have. We previously had some temporary housing or temporary bunks inside the jail when our population was at 230. I think that we can also come up with some ways to work with the community corrections to put less violent offenders, less serious offenders on monitored like work release or house arrest. I think that's an alternative that we need to look at once the jail population starts spiking.
And I totally agree that we use community corrections, although as far as work release, that's pretty much filled up. And I know they do put people on home detention, and I don't know what their capacity is for that yet, but anytime we get a chance to put somebody on there, they take them, put them on home detention and monitor them that way. So little things like that, I agree, there's ways to try to reduce the population, but you still are going to be full or overpopulated in there.
And just as a follow-up, it's not necessarily rebuttal, but with a building that's 25 plus years old, there are going to be some maintenance issues. And my house is well over 25 years old. It's 50 years old. So I know that there's maintenance issues constantly. And I think that, even if I was a first-term sheriff, I don't think I'd suggest building a new jail with the economy the way it is currently and the fact that our facilities with some TLC can be maintained for years to come.
Thank you, gentlemen. Donnie, you will get the first response to the next question. The Sheriff's Department came under criticism in the latter part of 2013 for the way it handled the discipline and the eventual resignation of Deputy Scott Rager. Most of the criticism centered on the length of the investigation and the fact that Deputy Rager was on paid suspension for 3 months while allegations were sorted out. Are you satisfied that the Sheriff's Department and the Merit Board handled the case appropriately?
No, I'm not. I've been in that position where you had to deal with disciplinary actions against employees. It's not a pleasant thing anytime you have to deal with disciplinary issues with an employee, whether it's a suspension, just a talking to, a letter of reprimand, or even a termination. I feel that it left some questions within the community and also within our department on how we dealt with one of our own committing crimes. I was approached by an officer on my shift who sincerely asked me, he says, "Lieutenant, you know, I'm a shift commander for the day shift," and he said, "Lieutenant," he said, "you know, Deputy Rager's on paid leave and has been for several months now." He said, "What's it take to get put on unpaid leave?" And I honestly did not have an answer. To me, paid leave is for when an officer does something in the line of duty that's questionable, such as being involved in a crash, being involved in a police action shooting, where you can have time to investigate that incident and not penalize the officer for doing his job. But when an officer is off duty, commits a crime, especially a felony, I think those incidents need to be dealt with in a swift manner. They need to be stern, and they need to send a message to the public that we deal with our problems swiftly and efficiently. As police officers, we are in a business of holding the community accountable. And I think it sends the wrong message to the community when we don't hold our own people accountable the way that we hold our citizens accountable.
Well, I have to admit, I wasn't happy with it either. I didn't like it. But unfortunately, when the rules and regulations were made on the department, there was a little clause put in there that the internal investigation and the criminal investigation could not go on at the same time. When a criminal investigation was going on, the internal investigation had to stop. And unfortunately, also by law, by statute, I cannot stop his pay. The Merit Board is the only one that can do that at a hearing. So I could not do that. There's been other issues, same situation. You can't stop paying an officer until they are terminated. That's the time that's been done. They've always gotten their back pay on that, so that can't be done. Since this has happened, I've gotten with the Merit Board, and we have corrected that. I don't know why the difference, but city police law is different. They can, by state law, they cannot do a criminal and an internal investigation at the same time. Sheriff's rules, you can, but unfortunately, since it was in our policy, we couldn't do it. I went to the Merit Board after this happened. We got that policy changed. If this happens again, hopefully it doesn't, but if it happens again, then they can go on at the same time, and it will be much swifter. I didn't like paying them during that time either, but I didn't have any choice in the matter.
This policy was not changed by our Sheriff's Merit Board until last month. This incident started in October of 2013. I would have, as sheriff, went to the Merit Board in November of 2013, got that policy changed because in November of 13 and also in December of 13, this officer was arrested for additional charges where you could have at that time terminated his employment with the Sheriff's Office with the assistance of the Merit Board.
I don't believe that you can change boats midstream in this situation. Okay, he's gone through this. We changed it in the middle of the stream. I just don't think legally that could have been done. Did I ask? No, I didn't ask, but I also worked with an attorney on this whole situation. He also knew that we couldn't do both investigations at the same time and never recommended that we get that switched during the investigation. He strongly suggests we change it once it was over with, but I don't believe that we could change it during the middle of the investigation.
Well, the subsequent charges were not related to the first charge, so I don't see how that would be a conflict myself.
But it was still an ongoing investigation with it. I don't believe we could have done it at that point, at that time. Like I said, it's been changed since then, and hopefully it never has to be put to use, but it is changed if it ever comes up again.
I'm going to stick on a related topic, probably much to your chagrin. Sheriff, you'll get the first response to this one. I'm going to take a kind of a bigger picture view of the Rager case. And that is the cynicism from the public that can result from seeing this type of impasse go on for week after week, whether legally or not, your hands were tied in being able to deal with it. What can the sheriff do to address the public perception that there are a number of bad actors out there wearing a badge?
I believe in the few cases that we have had that, I've tried to take care of them. Obviously, this one wasn't swift. And like I said, I didn't like it any more than anybody else liked it. I did try to, I know when the reporter would come and talk to me about the situation, and I would try to emphasize, and I know people aren't happy that an officer's basically getting an extended vacation. They aren't working, but still getting paid. But every time that would come up, and the story would come up, and the reporter would come talk to me, then I would emphasize to them, please let them know our hands are tied with this. We don't have a choice. We have to pay them until they are terminated or they resign. And, in Scott Rager's case, as soon as he resigned, then his pay stopped, and we were able to move on with that one. But it's just a matter of letting the public know when this happens, why we can't do it. And I try to deal swiftly with situations. Again, I know his dragged out longer, but that was one of the reasons in trying to change that policy. So if it does happen again, it can be dealt with, and hopefully it's much swifter and taken care of quickly.
Well, there was other incidents involving the same officer, and I don't want to go into a lot of the details about that, but there was other issues involving this officer that weren't dealt with in a swift manner. And as you can see in the reporter, we've got $1.4 million worth of lawsuits pending because of that. And I don't think that the fact that we can't conduct an internal investigation while a criminal investigation is pending was intentionally put into our policy manual. But as I stated earlier, that should have been addressed in November of 2013. And then the subsequent arrest after that could have been dealt with swiftly, and the officer would not have been on the payroll for 5 months on paid leave, or 4 months on paid leave.
It's true, there are 2 tort claims filed against it, but I don't think the swiftness of how this was handled. It was an officer that a couple different individuals were seeing, and that this involved, and so they have decided to file a tort claim on that. Haven't actually been sued yet, but the tort claim has been filed, and let's see where that goes. But again, I don't think the swiftness of this had anything to do with that.
Anything else? I'll give you a little more latitude.
I'm fine.
Okay. We'll move on to the next topic. And Lieutenant Munden, you will have first response to this one. The intramural aspect of this race, I'm sure, has made for some awkwardness at the Hancock County Sheriff's Department, as it does whenever an employee runs against his boss. My question is, how will you handle the workplace environment starting on the morning of May 7th, the day after the election?
Well, for 27 years, I've served with pride. I've served to the best of my ability, and I've served the citizens of Hancock County. And regardless of what the outcome is on May 7th, I'll continue to do that. I enjoy what I do. I think that the men and women of our sheriff's office do a good job for the citizens of Hancock County. And up until this point, people ask me, how is it to work against the boss when you're running against him in an election? And honestly, I admit to him that there's not been any adversity, no controversy. We are professional. We do our jobs. We'll continue to do our jobs. And I look forward to serving as Hancock County Sheriff. But if I'm not elected sheriff, I'll continue to serve in my capacity to the best of my ability. And I'll make sure that Hancock County and the time that my officers are working is as safe as possible, and will continue to do so.
Not a whole lot I can say with that. Like he said, it's been a fine working relationship. We There's not been any situations, issues that have come up. And come May 7th, either way, I'll still be in office, and plan on the working relationship to continue. He'll do his job. I'll continue doing mine, and we will move forward.
Not exactly what you was hoping for, huh?
No, I was kind of hoping you were going to. No, that wasn't what I was hoping for. That could have been the lead of the story. Okay, moving right along. We have 15 minutes to go. You threw me off there, guys.
Sorry.
I think we stumped him a little bit.
Sheriff Shepard will have first response to this question. This one comes from the audience. Thank you to whoever submitted this. Why was the dive team reactivated in 2011 when everybody's already said that there's not enough manpower for a drug task force?
There's two totally separate things. The drug task force pulls individuals off the road. They aren't working the road anymore to be out patrolling the neighborhoods. It takes the manpower. Dive team, to begin with, we still had all of our equipment. I'm not really sure why it was disbanded, but we still had all of our equipment. We didn't have to purchase new equipment. We had trained divers still on the department. And these are individuals that are on call. They're not, yes, they do some dive training, do a little bit of dive training each month, but they're not on call. So it's not comparing apples to apples or oranges to oranges. It's totally different situation. You're not, like I said, you're not pulling somebody off the road to be a dive team. You're pulling individuals, manpower off the road to have a drug task force. So it's totally different.
Do you agree with the apples to oranges comparison?
Yeah, I do. Actually, that's not the same. I mean, the dive team is a supplemental part of the department, and I would have to look at the overall cost of the operation of having a dive team. There are more and more police agencies across the country that are getting away from having dive teams because, primarily a dive is a rescue function, which is usually assumed by the fire department or Department of Natural Resources. I think that if I was to continue with the dive team, it would have to prove to me that it was needed, and I don't know at this point that that's something that's going to be proved. I don't know, luckily, that we don't have that many drownings in Hancock County, and I honestly can't remember the last time they were deployed. As far as one of the arguments is that we need a law enforcement dive team to recover evidence if needed, and that's certainly a somewhat of a viable argument, but my answer to that would be that you could still have a fire department dive team, the state police has a dive team, and use those divers to recover evidence if possible. I know that when we go to autopsies and evidence is recovered from the victim of a crime, we don't actually do the incisions on the corpse. The doctor does that, and we recover the evidence at that time. And that's the same thing that that's to me one of the only viable options is the fact that that you would be there to recover evidence, but police officers aren't the only people allowed to recover evidence. We can maintain a chain of custody by doing so through other resources.
And it's true, fire departments a lot of times do, but our fire department quit having a dive team. In fact, they gave us a lot of their equipment. So the fire departments here don't have a dive team now. Like I said, we were able to get it started back up without any expense. The only expense in it is if they had to get any overtime for the dive training. So, could we do without? Maybe, but if you wait on the state police or DNR, then there's a longer time delay. So I felt that there was a need to reinstate it, and so we did.
I'm pretty sure that the fire chief told me recently that they have a swiftwater rescue team as part of their certifications, and the Department of Natural Resources, the state police also have those services. Like I said, it's not like I'm going to stay here and tell you that I'm going to cut that day one, but I think I would have to look and see if it's feasible that we continue to do that with depending on how much it cost us and what the return we get for that.
Thank you. Lieutenant Munden, you will have first response to this next question. It deals with something that's on your campaign platform, actually, about community involvement. You have proposed an expansion of the Neighborhood Crime Watch program and also establishing a Business Watch program that would operate similar to Neighborhood Watch. Inherent in those suggestions is the suggestion that the Sheriff's Department community outreach is somehow lacking. Is that what you're trying to suggest with that part of your campaign platform?
I think we could do that better. I think that's something that we as a sheriff's office could improve on. I'm currently the only certified crime watch coordinator in law enforcement in Hancock County. Currently, if any homeowners association neighborhood was to contact me or the sheriff's office to set up a watch, I'd be glad to do so. A trend that's starting to take hold nationwide is incorporating businesses into that field as well. And what it would do is get a group of business owners and managers together to explain to them and show them things that they could do to safeguard their property once they close shop for the evening and go home. And you know, the crimes that are committed against businesses are just about 12 hours off of when they're committed against residences. When people are at work, that's when burglars commit their crimes, usually between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Most nighttime business burglaries occur between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. Shortly after dark, and obviously if the thieves and burglars are out past 2 a.m., they're more likely to get apprehended by the police. So I think that that's something that we could do better as a sheriff's office. And you know, anytime that you train citizens to improve their observation skills and how to report a crime properly, and I think that's an opportunity that we have to have more eyes and ears out there to assist law enforcement, and hopefully that would keep us from number one, having more crimes, but number two, possibly from having to hire more officers, because the crime rate naturally should go down.
I totally agree that it is a good program. Matter of fact, when I took office, Lieutenant Munden came to me and told me that he was doing the neighborhood watch programs and asked if I cared if he continued doing that. I said, no, that's fine. I agree that you should continue doing that. So I guess my only concern is if it's so important now, why wasn't it important before now, and why didn't he take action on this before? I've had a few people over the years since I've been in office want a neighborhood watch program, and I referred them to him. And so I'm not sure what's coming out now, if it's important. Since he is the only coordinator of it, he had my approval for it. Why didn't you go ahead and start this sooner?
I started Neighborhood Crime Watch in 2008 when I was serving as chief deputy. We took office in 2007, attended the National Sheriff's Conference where I received my certification, and in 2008, and immediately started Crime Watch programs in Hancock County. It wasn't after you took office that they started. We had about 10 to 12 operational at the time you took office, and since then we've included about 15 neighborhoods into that watch.
I didn't say it was started afterwards. I agree. Like I said, you came to me, said that you did these, so that's why I gave my approval to do that. So I assumed that if there was more to do, that you would have taken that forward and done that. So I said you had my approval from, I think, like January of 11 when I first took office, and so I know that was going on beforehand, and it was fine with me to continue, for you to continue doing it.
Just to clarify, the Business Watch is something that's new, that's starting to take hold nationwide. It's not widespread across the country. That's just something I wanted to expand to offer to the business owners in our community.
And so I remain sheriff, then he has my approval to continue doing that, and we'll expand that program.
We have time for one more question. Sheriff Shepard, you will have the first response to this one. I'm going to go back to your campaign 4 years ago and a quote that came up right around this time during the primary campaign. And your quote was, "It was quoted to me that Sheriff Bud Gray runs the Sheriff's Department by fear and intimidation. He wants everybody to be scared to death of him." 4 years later, and you were saying that as a way of describing what you perceived to be your predecessor's management style. 4 years later, how would you characterize your own management style as sheriff?
I believe the best type of leader is considered a servant leader. I'm out here serving the public. I'm out here serving you guys. And I want my guys out here working, out here serving the public. I don't believe in micromanaging them. I don't believe in telling them how to do their jobs. You know, police work, they're out there, they have a job to do. So to do any more than that, I think, is considered micromanaging them. But I have them work. I'm probably considered laid back in my leadership style, but like I stated before, if the leaders, the lieutenants, the division commanders have a problem, they need something, they can come talk to me, we would deal with it. Like I said, I'm ultimately responsible for whatever happens within the department and do take responsibility if anything does come up.
Lieutenant Munden?
I consider myself a hands-on leader. I think that the fact that I treat people fairly there's been plenty of people who've transferred to my shift that came to me afterwards and said, you know, wasn't sure how this was going to work out, but I really admire the way you run your shift. Our officers do a great job for the citizens of our county. And I think that one of the biggest overlooked opportunities that a good leader has is the ability to nurture and to foster future generations of leaders. And I think that I have that ability to take someone who has leadership abilities and to foster and to work with them in order to improve their career and to maximize their potential for the citizens of our county. Currently, we've got some good officers. We've got a lot of young officers. And those young officers need direction, they need leadership, and they need someone to guide them in their path so that they can achieve their fullest potential.
I totally agree, and that's why I've tried to put good leaders on the shifts. The lieutenants, the shift commanders are good leaders. They're the ones that should be there nurturing those officers. They're the ones that's hands-on with them. And so that's why I've tried my best to get good leaders within the department.
Thank you, gentlemen. That concludes the questions. We'll move on now to the closing statements. And Sheriff Shepard, you go first.
Okay, thank you. And again, I want to thank the reporter and the library for hosting this. I appreciate it. Like I said, I think one of the biggest issues is the drug task force. I think you heard enough about that. I would like to get some interesting statistics, though. In the previous 4 years before my administration, when there was a drug task force, there was an average in the 4 years of 135 burglaries. My first 3 years as sheriff, it averaged 131. That's not a big difference there until you look at how many arrests have been made. And I checked with my chief investigator, and he took the average arrest for burglary in the previous 4 years was 15 a year. Since I've been in office and trying to get more officers on the road, there have been an average of just a little over 25 arrests per year for burglary. That's over a 65% increase. So I still maintain, and my top priority is maintaining the road division, the patrol division that are out there patrolling the highways, they're out there patrolling the neighborhoods, they're out there keeping you safe. Again, I thank you for this opportunity. Appreciate everyone coming here, your attendance, and appreciate your support. Thank you.
I appreciate the fact that you guys all showed up on a Friday night at 5 o'clock to listen to what we had to say. I wish that there was more more people here than there is, but that's the way it rolls. I wasn't going to bore you with a bunch of statistics, but since he brought some statistics up, the fact that the burglaries have not increased or decreased much since he's sheriff, that's kind of speaks for itself. The statistic that I'm interested in, though, is the fact of the drug arrest that the Daily Reporter did a good story on, showing the decline in the drug arrest since Sheriff Shepard took office, and almost the inverse of that is the number of people who have overdosed because of illegal drugs in our county. When I started looking into statistics to find out, where our shortfalls are, I knew that there was a lot of people overdosing. I'd talked to fire department, I've talked to other shifts and law enforcement agencies, and there was a bunch of people that have been dying in Hancock County. Is a drug task force going to prevent all these people from overdosing? Absolutely not. But I think we need to do what we can to keep that from happening as much as possible. The statistics that I found shocking, I figured there was probably, in the last 3.5 years, 20 or 30 people who had overdosed. I talked with representatives from the health department and from the coroner's office, and I was astonished to find out that it's over 65 people have passed away in Hancock County because of illegal drugs. That's not to include the ones who survived who have medical issues to this day. And for us as the largest law enforcement agency in Hancock County to sit back on our hands, not do drug investigations on street-level drugs in Hancock County, I think is wrong. I think that's something that we need to address swiftly. I've made this a campaign issue for the last year, and for the last year, nothing's been done. I assure you that if you elect me sheriff of Hancock County, that'd be one of my top priorities. And on January 1, we will get a task force operational so that they can better serve the citizens of Hancock County. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your candor this evening. I also would like to thank everybody who's joined us here at the community room at the Hancock County Public Library to learn more about the candidates for Hancock County Sheriff. Just a reminder that before long it will be up to you to decide which one of these candidates moves forward to the fall election. Early voting begins on Tuesday. Election day is May 6th. And if you're not registered yet to vote, the deadline to do that is on Monday. So thanks again to the candidates for participating. Would also like to thank my friends at the Hancock County Public Library who co-sponsored the debate this evening. And also thanks to the Greenfield Central Broadcasting Department, which recorded this event this evening. It will be telecast on 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock Monday evening on the 9-Star Connect cable system. Thank you, Mr. McKenna. Appreciate your help. And thanks to everybody for being here. It's really nice to see such a large crowd. I hope everybody was able to get some insights into what the candidates stand for. Thank you very much for coming.